Okie doke. So let's see. What was the exact question people keep asking? I think it was here. Let's see. Results. Yeah. Tooltips and state across various D3 charts in a React dashboard. Now let's try building that. We're gonna do it in Code Sandbox so that it's easy to share. I'm going to zoom in a little bit. There we go. If anyone can't see that, please yell at me on the chat room. Update available, alright. Fork that sucker. And what else? Let's see, what can we do? Let's give it a name. React and D3 dashboard with synchronized tooltips. Wonderful. And let's add, what's it called? Let's try to use hooks, because why not? So where are our dependencies? Here we take out React, take out React DOM, add dependency, React, we set it to next, click, add dependency, React DOM, set it to next, bam, got that. We're also gonna need D3, like that, cool. Hey 01 Pollux, how are you doing? I'm doing pretty good. Playing around with some hooks and D3 and stuff. We'll see how it goes. Okay, I'm gonna give it a title so that if anyone joins later they can see what's going on. React and D3 dashboard with synced. Yes, go ahead. What's your question? With synced tooltips. For simplicity, it's scatter plots. React stepper. I'm not sure what you mean by I'm not sure what you mean with a stepper library. What is that? Okay. Yeah, it's not a Twitter ban. I'm still waiting for this thing. Here it's gonna say that I'm still not a developer. See if I go to apps. I am still pending, so until that happens, there's really not much I can continue doing on that project. So we're gonna try stepper-like progress. So Pollux, I think it's best if you build that yourself. It's going to be a lot easier for you. So we're going to make first we're going to need a scatterplot component that takes data, and we're going to create a data set, a random data set that has different parameters. Then we're going to create a scatterplot component, and then we're gonna add tooltips. So let's start with a data set. Yeah. So function app, and because we have this, we can say use memo. And let's see, how do we use memo again? Oh, thanks. I'm glad you enjoyed the Morty Mind Blowers. That was a fun one to build. Okay, let's see what this React stepper horizontal is about. Now that looks cool. So I think if you could style that, it could be pretty cool. But maybe that's something for a different day. Maybe it's a good idea. Maybe we can build that on Sunday or something. But right now, let's try building this one. So how do I use memo again? I forgot already. Hooks API reference, use memo. I can't hear you, my love. I can't. This is the quietest it goes. There. Is that better? Okay, so compute expensive value, blah. we're gonna say const data equals use memo blah, and we're gonna give it an empty param so that it only runs the first time. So generate data, generate random data on first load. Cool. So we're gonna say, let's see, how many data points do we want? Let's go with 100. 100 seems like a good idea. We're going to say import range from d3 minus array, and we say range of 100 map like that. So range of 100, we map it, we take the index, and let's see, what do we return? We're going to return an object that's going to have multiple what would these be called? Axes? No, not axes. Dimensions. So dimension 1 is math.random, dimension 2 is math.rand. Node modules code, I think all of it gets compiled, or usually node modules already come pre-compiled, so you already have those, and then it gets essentially inserted into your bundle. But the caveat there is that Webpack does perform tree shaking, as it's called, so any code that you're not using gets thrown out. Let's see, so we might want to have an ID that's going to be the index, and then yes, let's do math random is dimension 1, dimension 2, let's add the faker library and get some more nicer looking data. So we're going to say faker, massive amounts of fake data, and let's look up how faker works. Faker for JavaScript, faker.js. Now let's see, what does it offer? I should zoom this in, right? Faker fake. Okay, so let's do it that way. We're going to have in ID a number that's random, and then we're going to have a name that's going to be faker. So import asterisk, import faker from faker, and range is like that. So we have faker dot name. Where is it? Faker name find name. Faker name dot find name and address. Let's say faker address. Oh, let's do email. Email sounds good. That's not going to be useful, is it? Do we have a year generator? Because if we're doing scatter plots, we are going to need, I guess we can do scatter plots and var charts of some sort. Let's see. Hacker, adjective, noun, finance, account, account name, mask, amount, date. Faker.date. What does date do? How does date work? That could be useful. Date. Yeah, very hard to plot email. So let's do card. You know, it might actually be easier to use random card. No, credit card. I know there's a credit card number. Let's see. So zip codes are useful. So zip code is faker address zip code. I think we're gonna do some sort of bar charts instead. Country code, state could be useful, latitude, longitude, commerce, company, database, column type, fake finance, hacker, helpers, image, internet, lorem words, name, first name, phone, random, number, float, array element, boolean word. So it turns out creating a fake data set is harder than it looks. Yeah, city could be useful, but then doing a geospatial data viz right now is going to be difficult. So we say faker address state. What else can we try? Oh, we could actually do a, let's see. Colors are very plottable. So let's see. Color, commerce color, internet color. Color faker internet color, and let's do number 2, which is also going to be math random. Cool. So now let's verify that we have some decent data. Why? I wanted more less than 3 music. So today, I don't know what I did at work, but I was able to get fully just on Radio Gosha's. It was only playing me music from there, and it was amazing. So we have our data here, where we get ID, number, name, zip code, state, color, number 2, and so on. Cool. Now let's try making a scatter plot component. Yes, scatter plot. So SVG, which takes a width of, let's do 800 and a height of 600, and inside it renders a scatter plot at x0, y0, and we're not gonna do any what's it called, no axes, because that's going to, it's not necessary right now. So we have scatter plot x y, width of, let's do 300, height of 300, and we pass in the data, and x dimension is going to be number 1, no, number and let's do number 1 and number 2. Okay. So x dimension is number 1, y dimension is number 2. Okay. Or actually, let's make it a function. That's gonna make it a lot more, how should I say, a lot more flexible. So we take a function that returns d.number1 and a function that returns d.number2. So that's going to give us our data, and then we create a scatterplot file, scatterplot.js. We go here and we import scatterplot, import scatterplot from /scatterplot, and the scatterplot imports React from React, then it imports asterisk as d3 from d3, and it exports default a scatterplot function that takes x, y, data, x dimension, width and height, data, x dimension and y dimension, and it returns what? So I'm going to be lazy here and do everything right here. So we're going to say const, so we're going to return a grouping element that is transformed to the, so it's translated to $x and $y. Then it goes through our data map, gets dparam, and for each one of those, and g, so for each one of those data params, it's going to do what exactly? It should return a circle, because we're trying to keep it simple, otherwise we could use render props or a bunch of cool stuff. So we use a circle that goes at x of x scale of x dimension of data, and y go cx and cy. Cx and cy go at, cy goes at y scale of y dimension of data, and the radius is going to be 3. Like that. Now we need the scale, so const x scale is going to be d3 scale linear with a domain that goes d3 extent of data with x dimension as the accessor. Yeah, and the range will go from 0 to width. Okay, and then const y scale equals d3 scale linear, where the domain goes for the entire extent of our data on the y dimension, with a range that goes from 0 to height. No, from height to 0. Ideally we would flip them around, but that's... Wow, why is this suddenly saying 0 viewers? That's weird. 0 to, let's do height. Okay, so all of this is now here. Why? Let me just check if I'm actually streaming. This seems good. Am I still live on YouTube? Oh, now it says 6. That's weird. Cool. Okay, 3 people here. That's fine. So now, why is this all? Yeah, everything should have a unique key prop. I knew we can use key can be d.id. Oh, because this needs to be the data point, not the full data. Okay, so now we have an entire scatter plot, and we can make it smaller. Let's say it's 200 pixels wide and 200 pixels tall, or even 150. Let's do 200. So we have 200s, and let's make it a little bit more styled. So I'm going to add styled components. Styled components, like that. And we say import styled from styled components, and const circle equals style.circle, which does what? So a styled circle should, let's say, our fill should be some nice color. Let's do steel blue, because that's been pretty popular. And fill opacity of 0.8, and stroke of steel blue, where stroke width is 1 pixel. voila. We can actually go down to 0.6 for opacity. So we now have these pretty circles, and we say cursor is pointer. Okay. And on hover, let's say the fill becomes orange. Cool. So we got that. That's neat. Oh, Restream app crashes. That's very plausible, actually. I wouldn't even be surprised. So we now have this sort of thing. Now let's see what happens if we try to pass some other dimensions to our scatterplot. So I'm going to copy the whole scatterplot again. Command C, Command V. So now we're gonna have double the scatterplot, but we're gonna position this one at 250 pixels to the right. See, now there's two. These are both identical scatterplots because we're passing in the same dimensions. Now what if for the vertical dimension we pass in the zip code? That's a number, so that might work. So we say zip code, and it turns out that is it called zip code? Yeah. It turns out that zip codes and number 1 do not really correlate very well. What's it complaining about? Received nan for the CY attribute. Give it a slight margin, yes. That's a good idea, have a margin or some sort of padding internally. But let's see, what is the zip code like? So it turns out that this is not very numbery. It's not something that I think the linear scale can work with. That's why it's getting confused. So that's why everything is on the same. Let's try adding some margin. So we're going to say we're gonna call it a padding instead. Padding by default is 5. So here this is going to go padding width minus padding, padding height minus padding. We should now see. That's interesting. Alright, so we have those paddings. Maybe let's make them 10 pixels instead. Where did it go? Padding. Sorry, because I'm so zoomed in, it's hard to scroll up and down without getting confused. So that's a bit better. The problem, however, is that these are all, they don't have a vertical coordinate. So we need to find a way to translate zip code into a number, or into a nice number that can go into a linear scale. So how do we do that? Let's see. So zip code, dimension, blah, 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 blah. What kind of scale can we use that would translate zip codes into numbers? Let's see. GD3 minus scale. Let's look for some inspiration over here. Insights. D3 scales, continuous, sequential, diverging, threshold, ordinal. Ordinal scales could be useful. Threshold, quantile, quantized, diverging. What is a sequential scales? continuous numeric input domain to a continuous output range. Unlike continuous scale, the output range of a sequential scale is fixed by its interpolator, blah. I think we're gonna need to use something like this, an ordinal scale. An ordinal scale which takes, what should we do? Takes our zips, yeah, where are we? React D3 dashboard. So we're going to say zip to number d.zip code, and our zip to number is going to be a scale here. So we're going to import scale ordinal from D3 scale, and here we're going to say const zip to number equals D3 scale ordinal, where we take our domain, our data map. We're going to take D3 zip code, and our range is going to be, let's say, 10 buckets, 50 buckets, 30 buckets. Let's do 20 buckets. So D3 range of 20. So just scale ordinal, no D3 dot, bucketize zip codes into 20 buckets. I think that should work. D3 is not defined, right, because it's just D3. 50 for the 50 states. That is, well, that's for states. We are doing zip codes. But you're right, we can try states, or let's do states, you're right. Let's do state to number, state range 50 bucketize states into 50 buckets, and here we say state to number the state. Cool. So it's hard to tell, but they are different scatter plots, I promise. So now the next step is going to be connecting them so that we have a common tooltip between them. And we could also alphabetize the names. Let's add a third scatter plot just because we can. So the third scatter plot is going to correlate on the x dimension. We're going to have state to number, but on the y dimension we're going to have the first name of the name. So letter to alphabetize d dot name 0. So, or just alphabet. Alphabet makes sense. Alphabet. So alphabetize letters into 25 buckets, which makes sense, right? So we say const alphabet equals scale ordinal, which takes a domain that A, B, you know what? We can do it this way. Domain. Let me try if that actually works. So if we say abcd dot split, perfect. So that works. So we can say the domain is abcdefg So here's what you may have noticed. I had to shut up in the middle of writing out the alphabet. That's because I learned it in Slovenian, and I still don't actually know how to do it in English, and it confuses the shit out of me. So the range is going to go to range 25. Cool. So our scatter plot then, this one is going to be at x0 and vertically 250. Voila. So here we have the alphabetized first names of people, and it would be easier to see this with axes, but maybe we can try that next. So we got the scatter plots. Now let's try adding a tooltip. We're gonna handle tooltips in each scatter plot individually, like this. Should we make it fully controlled? Yes, probably. But let's see. First, I'm gonna do it here. So on mouse over equals set tooltip enable tooltip. Yes. Or rather, set tooltip false on mouse out, set tooltip false and true. So I got them flipped around. So we have set tooltip false and true, and here we're going to say const tooltip and set tooltip equals set state use state which starts as false, and we're going to import use state from React, and here if the tooltip is the tildes on letters are for how you pronounce it. So an S with a tilde on top. So an S that looks like, I don't actually know how to type those. I have my keyboard set to English, so I can't actually type those letters anymore. Oh, can I do it this way? Yes. So this is pronounced as sh, whereas S is just S. So this is the same as SH in English. Right, so where was I? Data map. We rendered that stuff. I think that one is wrong. And then if we have the tooltip, and then we render the tooltip at we're going to set the tooltip to d.id, or just to d. That's going to be even easier. So we have d, and we say the tooltip is rendered at x scale of x dimension of tooltip, and the vertical position is at y scale of y dimension of tooltip, and the info is just tooltip. Okay, and then we have to close that. So we're rendering a tooltip. Yeah, Doncic is, I heard he's a very good basketball player. I don't really follow basketball, so I don't know much about him, but yeah, the way you pronounce it is Doncic, I think. He might be from like Croatia or something, so you might have to pronounce it differently, because we had a lot of immigration from the Balkans into Slovenia in like the 90s and the 80s and the 70s and probably the 60s as well. So tooltip becomes a const tooltip equals a component that takes x, y, and info and returns. What should it return? It's gonna have to render a bunch of stuff, and in my experience it might be easiest. Oh, that's actually a cool one. This is also an old video. So this guy, I don't know if you've seen this video before, but this is from like 2016. This guy built a machine that uses marbles to play music, and it's just amazing, and I don't think it's loud enough to hear. There we go. Yeah, and I just think that's crazy amazing. So tooltip, I'm going to use embedded HTML in SVG because that makes it easier to handle complex stuff. Let's make it a little less loud. Okay, so SVG embed HTML because I always forget how that works. I know there's a way, I just forgot. No. Embed HTML into an HTML5 foreign object. So foreign object at blah. Perfect. So we're going to say, where are we? It returns a foreign object that takes our x and our y, and let's give it a width of 100 and a height of 50. Foreign object, and inside we're going to render a div which will have what? Let's say strong info.name, and then a paragraph that says info dot, what did we generate? We created a name zip code state, so we can say zip code name dot state and info dot zip code. That's our p, and we're going to say p with style of color info.color is going to render our number 2 and number 1. Info.number1 blah info.number 2. So now when we mouse over something, we should in theory get a tooltip. There we go. It's a little bigger than I expected, so let's fix that. We're going to let's style our foreign object with styled components. Let's see if that works. Foreign object equals style.foreign object, where background is white. Let's see if that works, and then if it does, we can continue. Kind of working. So background white, font size 9 pixels. Much better. Okay. So marker cap, Mississippi, blah, and a gigantic S number. Let's make those numbers a little bit smaller. So we say math dot to fixed. No, math dot fixed to fixed. JavaScript to fixed. I know that exists. Oh, it's just number dot to fixed. Okay, we can do that. So info number 1 dot to fixed. Yeah, we can add transparency to the tooltip as well, but that will make it very hard to read. Let's say to fixed 2, to fixed 2. Cool. And let's make them text align left. Is that what it is? Okay, that's cool. And you see some of them are green, some of them are other colors. It's not very easy to see. That's not great. Oh, and I think now the other problem, we're going to offset these guys by 10 pixels because that will make them flicker less. So plus 10, y plus 10. See, now they're much more stable because they're actually out of the way of the mouse, so the mouse isn't falling off of the circle and going onto the tooltip. So let's give them a nice border. Border 1 pixel solid steel blue. No. Solid gray. Actually, let's just do a box shadow. Box shadow. CSS box shadow. I always forget how that works. So we got box shadow, 5 pixels, 10 pixels. Let's get this one and see how it works, and then we can adapt from there. 3 pixels and 5 pixels. Well, that's weird. Okay, maybe I should actually read how this works. H offset, V offset, blur, spread, color. Let's try this one. So the reason I'm just trying existing ones is because I don't feel like thinking too hard about this. And it's also weird. I think this is a bug. Is it just me, or does this look like an either code sandbox or HTML in general bug? Let's make a recording of this because I need to ask people who know more than me. So blah blah blah, and now it's not gonna happen, is it? Ah, there we go. Okay, that's a nice one. So we're gonna ask Sarah Edo about this. She's probably gonna be the best to know. Cool. Okay, we got that. Save. Now, how do we make these guys connected so that what I want to do next is when I mouse over here, I want all of the scatter plots to show me their tooltip for this same data point. So what I'm gonna do is use context. Here we're going to say const tooltip equals let's see, how does use context work again? Use context. See, I'm also still learning hooks. I'm trying to get better at them, so I'm forcing myself to use them. Accepts a context object, the value returned returns the current context value as given by the nearest context provider for the given context. When the provider updates, this hook will trigger a re-render with the latest context value. Interesting. Okay, let's try to figure this out. The last time I used use context was with constate, which made a lot of things easier, but I guess we'll see. So we're going to say const tooltip equals use state. So tooltip and set tooltip equals use state. Wow, what the fuck? And use state starts as false. Then we have const tooltip context equals react create context. So actually this is provider, let's just do tooltip context, and we render our entire scatter plot in the tooltip context.provider. Yeah, and we're going to close that sucker. So tooltip context.provider blah. We'll see if that works. I think it should. No, use state is not defined. Okay, so we gotta pull that sucker in. So we say use state here, and for our state we're going to react create context. React state is tooltip. So it would be useful to have both tooltip and set tooltip in the same context, wouldn't it? Okay, let's say the state is like this, tooltip and set tooltip. So it's a object state. Tooltip set tooltip goes in, and then our scatter plots are going to use context, and here instead of use state, where are we? We're going to change this to be objects and say use context, right? And I think that should work. Use context. It needs to get the context. How do we do that? Okay, let's. Yeah, I'm not sure how to share this, how best to share this between different components. So, because if we pass it into scatterplots, that kind of defeats the purpose. So let's try. Actually, let's do it this way. We're going to say const tooltip and set tooltip equals use tooltip, which is going to be our personal hook, and we're going to say, let's see, import use tooltip from /use tooltip, and this is a completely new pattern, or at least I haven't seen it yet, so I'm gonna see if this works. I'm trying it out. So we say import use state from import react and use state from react, and then we export default use tooltip, and we say function use tooltip is const tooltip set tooltip returns tooltip and set tooltip const tooltip context. Now let's see. We need a provider and a consumer. So export use tooltip and tooltip context. Okay. Use tooltip blah. Oh, I know what we can do. We can say use tooltip, and that's going to return, let's see, return tooltip return. Should it render stuff? No, that, yeah, it does look a bit like Redux, doesn't it? Let's see. Okay, you know what? For now, let's just return tooltip and set tooltip like this, like what we had before. And we're going to export use tooltip and tooltip context. So we go in index.js, which here is going to say use tooltip as state. Pass that into provider. Tooltip context, what is this? Tooltip context is not defined, I know. So import use tooltip and tooltip context from /use tooltip. Blah, pass state into our use tooltip thing, and then in the scatter plots we're going to import tooltip context from /use tooltip, and this one down here is going to say what? So const tooltip and set tooltip. Oh, did we already do that? Yeah. So these guys come from context, which is tooltip context. Now let's see if that works. No, it does not. The above error occurred. Cannot read property tooltip of undefined. Oh, because this is a value, not state. Okay. Now what's it complaining about? Remove child on node, the node blah. Let's try that again. Okay, so now, in theory, when I mouse over here, it works. Voila. So we have a shared context for our tooltips. So when you mouse over one of them, you get the tooltip everywhere. And that was basically what we were trying to achieve, wasn't it? The shadows are kind of, the shadows are broken. So I should remove the shadow because it makes it look way worse than it actually is. And instead of the shadow, we're going to say border right is 2 pixel solid 8888, and border bottom is 2 pixel solid hash 8888. No, that didn't work. I wonder why that didn't work. Border right. Yeah, anyway, maybe what if we set the shadow on the div? That might work better. So let's see, div Okay, that works much better. Interesting. So you shouldn't be setting borders on the foreign object itself or shadows, but if you set it on the div that's inside your thing, then it works. So that was basically what we were trying to achieve over here, and I think that's pretty cool, because with hooks this was surprisingly easy. Awesome. So we got the thing working. I'm going to stop live coding now. Hopefully I can get Twitter Twitter verified as soon as possible. And I think this is cool enough that I will write an article about it probably for Monday. So expect that in your email inboxes or on Twitter or wherever you like to find your articles. But I think it's pretty cool. I'm happy how well this came together. So thanks everyone for watching, and I will see you again most likely Sunday afternoon.